My shoulders shook violently as I pressed my forehead against the cold industrial refrigerator in Mr. Valerius's chef-grade kitchen, desperately trying to cool the fever of tears that had been building for weeks. My ragged breathing echoing off stainless steel appliances that cost more than everything my family had ever owned combined, when I heard the heavy footsteps behind me and froze in absolute terror. Standing in the doorway, filling the entire entrance with his imposing 6'3" frame that always made the massive kitchen feel suddenly claustrophobic and dangerous, was Cash Valerius himself, New York's most ruthless mafia kingpin. The man whose breakfast I prepared every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m. The man whose dark eyes could make hardened criminals beg for mercy, still wearing his tailored charcoal suit from whatever business he'd conducted tonight. His calloused hand already reaching toward my face with an expression I'd never seen cross his devastatingly dangerous features before, genuine, unfiltered concern. Before we continue, if you're already hooked by Odette and Cash's story, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss an upload. And tell me, what time is it where you're watching from, and where in the world are you? For 6 months, I had maintained the perfect facade of the invisible, efficient maid. The woman who never flinched when she cleaned blood from Italian marble floors. Who never asked questions about the briefcases full of cash, or the hushed conversations about territories and shipments that echoed through the mansion at 3 a.m. Who kept my eyes down and my voice soft even when Mr. Valerius's dangerous world crashed against the walls of this estate, like violent waves threatening to drown everything in their path. I had been so careful, so meticulously silent, organizing his chaotic empire from the shadows with perfectly pressed uniforms and precisely timed service, keeping my inappropriate attraction to him buried so deep beneath layers of, yes, Mr. Valerius, and right away, sir, that I sometimes almost convinced myself it didn't exist at all. But now, at 2:47 a.m. by the digital clock on the 6-burner range, everything was crumbling around me like a house of cards in a hurricane. And the one person I never wanted to see me broken, the man who could end my life with a single command, was staring at me with an intensity that made my already racing heart threaten to burst right through my ribcage, his large hand reaching for my chin with impossible tenderness. I had arrived at the Valerius estate 6 months ago with nothing but a battered suitcase and the kind of desperation that made you willing to work for a man whose name appeared in hushed newspaper articles about organized crime. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, had taken one look at my hollow cheeks and trembling hands and put me to work immediately. No questions asked about why a 23-year-old woman would accept a live-in position in a mansion that everyone knew belonged to New York's most dangerous criminal. I didn't care about the rumors or the danger. I only cared about the salary, more money than I'd ever seen in my life, enough to send home to my mother for her medications, enough to keep my younger brother and sister fed and in school. From my first day, I learned the unspoken rules that kept girls like me alive in a world like this. Eyes down, voice soft, become invisible. I perfected the art of entering rooms without making a sound, of cleaning blood from marble floors at dawn without my hands shaking, of pretending I didn't see the men in expensive suits who arrived at midnight carrying briefcases that definitely didn't contain legal documents. I became a ghost who restocked his whiskey, who knew he took his coffee black at 6:30 a.m. sharp, who could anticipate his needs before he voiced them. But being invisible didn't mean I was blind. I saw everything, the guns casually placed on his desk during phone calls conducted entirely in Italian, the way his underboss Marco looked at me like I was something he could take whenever he wanted, the controlled violence in Cash's movements when someone disappointed him. I watched him from beneath lowered lashes as I served his meals, memorizing the sharp line of his jaw, the way his tailored suits emphasized his powerful build, the rare moments when something almost like amusement softened his severe features. It was a shameful, dangerous attraction that I buried deep, because girls like me didn't dream about men like Cash Valerius. We survived them. For 6 months, I maintained my careful invisibility. I sent every penny home. I ignored Marco's increasingly bold comments. I pretended not to notice when Cash's dark eyes followed me across rooms. But then the calls started, my brother's voice tight with fear, talking about loan sharks and threats and debts our father had left behind before he died. Then Marco cornered me in the wine cellar last week, his hands on my waist, his breath hot against my neck as he whispered that Mr. Valerius didn't need to know how I could earn extra money. Then this morning, my mother's nurse called to say they were stopping her treatment unless we paid the overdue balance. I had finally shattered. And now Cash was here, seeing everything I'd kept hidden. "Odette," he said, and the sound of my name in his deep, commanding voice, the voice that usually issued orders about shipments and territories and making problems disappear, made something crack wider in my chest. Because there was a softness there I'd never heard before, a gentleness that seemed impossible coming from a man who'd reportedly killed 3 rivals with his bare hands in a warehouse in Brooklyn. I kept my forehead pressed against the refrigerator, my eyes squeezed shut, praying somehow I could disappear into the stainless steel, that he would simply leave me to my breakdown and fire me in the morning when I could at least pretend to have some dignity left. But Cash Valerius didn't leave. Instead, I heard his footsteps crossing the kitchen floor, slow and deliberate, each one making my heart pound harder against my ribs. The air shifted as he moved closer, bringing with it the scent of his expensive cologne and something darker, gunpowder, maybe, or just the essence of danger that clung to him like a second skin. The enormous kitchen with its marble countertops and professional-grade appliances suddenly felt impossibly small, the warm pendant lighting creating an intimate bubble that trapped us together in this moment I'd never wanted him to witness. "Look at me," he said quietly, and it wasn't a request. His hand found my shoulder first, warm through the thin fabric of my uniform, then slid to cut my jaw with surprising tenderness, his callous fingers gentle as they tilted my face away from the refrigerator and toward him. I had no choice but to open my tear-swollen eyes and meet his gaze, and what I saw there stole what little breath I had left. His dark eyes burned with an intensity one couldn't name, studying my face like he was memorizing every tear track, every sign of my breaking. There was no anger in his expression, no irritation at finding his maid having a breakdown in his kitchen at nearly 3 a.m. Just that devastating concern, and beneath it, something fierce and protective that made my knees weak. "Who did this to you?" The question came out deadly calm, each word precisely enunciated, but I could feel the violence coiled beneath his control, could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his free hand curled into a fist at his side. This was the man who'd built an empire through ruthlessness and fear, and right now, all that lethal focus was directed at whoever had made me cry. "Tell me their name, Odette. Tell me who hurt you, and I'll handle it." And that's when I understood he wasn't angry at me for my tears. He was furious at whoever had caused them, ready to unleash hell on my behalf. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Valerius," I managed to whisper, my voice cracking halfway through as fresh tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and humiliating against my skin. I tried to step back, to put distance between us, but the refrigerator was behind me and his hand still cupped my jaw, holding me in place with that impossible gentleness. "This is completely unprofessional. I shouldn't be. I'll just go back to my quarters and this won't happen again. I promise it won't interfere with my work. Please, I just need this job, I can't." "Stop." The single word cut through my rambling apology like a knife, sharp and absolute. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, wiping away a tear with a tenderness that made my chest ache. "In 6 months, you have never once been late. Never once served my coffee at the wrong temperature. Never once asked a single question about the things you've seen in this house, things that would make most people run screaming or call the police." His dark eyes bored into mine, and I watched something dangerous flicker in their depths. "You've cleaned blood from my floors without flinching. You've maintained your composure when men twice your size have walked through my doors carrying weapons. You've been perfect, Odette. Flawless. So don't insult me by apologizing for being human." The words LODG'd in my throat, all my practiced deflections and careful subservience crumbling under the weight of his unwavering stare. He wasn't going to let me minimize this, wasn't going to accept my attempt to make myself small and invisible again. And maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the way he was looking at me like I actually mattered, but the truth started spilling out before I could stop it. My mother, I choked out, she needs treatment. Cancer. And the hospital, they're stopping everything unless we pay what we owe. And my father, before he died, he borrowed money from the wrong people, and now they're threatening my brother, saying he has to pay the debt or they'll. My voice broke completely. And Marco, your underboss, he cornered me last week and said I could earn extra money if I was nice to him, and I can't tell you because what if you don't believe me? What if you fire me, and I need this job so badly I watched Cash's expression transform. The concern bled away, replaced by something glacial and terrifying, cold, calculated rage that made the temperature in the kitchen seem to drop 10 degrees. His hand fell from my face, both fists clenching at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice was soft and deadly as a blade sliding from its sheath. Marco touched you. It wasn't a question. You're under my protection now. Cash's words were absolute, leaving no room for negotiation or refusal. He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket with one hand while the other remained clenched at his side, barely restrained violence radiating from every line of his body. That means no one touches you. No one threatens you. No one makes you cry without answering to me personally. Mr. Valerius, you don't have to, I started, but he silenced me with a look that could have stopped bullets. I don't do anything I don't want to do, Odette. He was already dialing, the phone pressed to his ear, his eyes never leaving mine. Antonio? I need you here. Now. Bring the financial records for Marco's accounts, all of them. A pause. I don't care what time it is. You have 15 minutes. He ended the call and immediately made another. Dr. Castellano? Cash Valerius. I'm sending you an address, a patient who needs immediate cancer treatment. Money is no object. I want the best oncologists in New York on her case by morning, and I want every overdue medical bill cleared tonight. Another pause. Yes, that's what I said. Tonight. I watched in stunned silence as he made call after call, his voice crisp and commanding, mobilizing resources with terrifying efficiency. My mother's hospital. The loan sharks threatening my brother. He spoke to someone in a tone that promised violence if they didn't disappear immediately. My brother's school tuition. Problems that had been crushing me for months were evaporating with each conversation, dissolved by nothing more than Cash Valerius deciding they shouldn't exist anymore. Relief flooded through me so powerfully it made my knees weak, but it came tangled with fear and guilt that made my stomach churn. This was what I'd wanted, someone to shoulder these impossible burdens, but I knew exactly what his help meant. I'd seen the aftermath of his problem-solving. The blood on marble floors. The men who crossed him and were never seen again. Marco would pay for touching me, and that payment would be brutal and permanent, and I should be horrified, but instead I felt something warm and desperate unfurling in my chest that felt dangerously close to gratitude. Thank you, I whispered, though the words felt inadequate for what he'd just done, for what he was about to do. Cash's eyes locked onto mine with possessive intensity. You don't sleep in the servants' quarters anymore. Pack your things tonight, you're moving to the East Wing guest suite. He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat of his body, smell his cologne mixed with danger. You stay where I can see you, where I can protect you. Understood. I nodded, understanding with crystalline clarity that I could never go back to being invisible. He'd seen me now, truly seen me, and everything had changed forever. The guest suite in the East Wing was larger than the entire apartment I'd shared with my family before coming here. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, silk curtains pooling on hardwood floors I'd polished 100 times, but never imagined walking across as anything other than staff. The bed was massive, draped in linens with a thread count I'd only seen on price tags that made me dizzy. I stood in the doorway with my pathetic suitcase, afraid to step inside, afraid to contaminate this beautiful space with my poverty and desperation. "It suits you," Cash said from behind me, making me jump. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. Better than that closet they had you sleeping in. Over the next 3 days, I watched Cash Valerius dismantle every problem in my life with surgical precision. My mother called, sobbing with relief, saying doctors had appeared and all her bills had vanished. My brother's voice shook when he told me the loan sharks had not only forgiven the debt, but actually apologized, before disappearing from our neighborhood entirely. I didn't ask what Cash had done to make dangerous men afraid. I didn't want to know. Even though I could guess from the way Marco hadn't been seen since that night, from the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. I should have been horrified. Should have felt guilt for the violence enacted in my name. But late at night, lying in silk sheets I didn't deserve, all I felt was a terrible, shameful relief that someone had finally fought for me, that someone had made the people hurting my family afraid. Cash checked on me constantly, appearing at breakfast to ensure I actually ate, asking about my mother's treatment with genuine interest, noticing when I was too quiet or when my hands trembled. He brought me updates delivered in that calm, commanding voice. "Your brother's been accepted to that engineering program. Full scholarship. Your mother's prognosis is good. Dr. Castellano is optimistic." Each gift wrapped in brutal efficiency, each kindness underscored by the violence that had made it possible. But the other staff noticed everything. Mrs. Chen's eyes had gone cold and calculating. The other maids whispered when I passed, their jealousy sharp as knives. Sleeping her way to the top, I heard one hiss. "Thinks she's special now." Even Antonio, Cash's right-hand man, watched me with an expression I couldn't read, assessment, maybe, or warning. "They hate me," I told Cash one evening when he found me in the library, unable to face dinner with the staff. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet space. "Let them hate. You're not theirs to judge." His hand found my chin, tilting my face up, and something dark and possessive flickered in his eyes. "You're mine to protect." It happened on a Thursday afternoon when Cash was meeting with suppliers in Brooklyn. I was crossing the estate's garden, carrying fresh linens to the pool house, when a black SUV pulled up to the side gate. 3 men emerged, moving with the casual confidence of people accustomed to taking what they wanted. The one in front, tall, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, smiled at me like a wolf spotting wounded prey. "You must be the maid Valerius is so fond of," he said, his accent thick with Russian inflection. "Dmitry Volkov sends his regards. He wanted you to know that men who get distracted by pretty things tend to make mistakes." Before I could scream, before I could run, one of them grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Just a message," Scarface continued, pulling a knife from his jacket. "Something for Valerius to remember that his territory isn't as secure as he thinks." The blade flashed toward my face, and then Antonio was there, gun already drawn, firing twice in rapid succession. The men scattered, one falling, the others diving back toward their SUV as more of Cash's security poured from the house. The whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds, but I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing that knife arcing toward me. Cash arrived 20 minutes later, and I'd never seen him like this, fury stripped of all control, violence barely leashed beneath his tailored suit. He found me in the library where Antonio had taken me, and the tenderness from before was gone, replaced by something feral and terrifying. He checked me over with clinical precision, his hands gentle despite the rage burning in his dark eyes, cataloging every bruise, every sign of trauma. "They touched you," he said quietly, and the softness of his voice was more frightening than shouting would have been. He made a phone call that consisted of 3 words, "Bring me Volkov." I watched over the next week as Cash systematically destroyed Dmitry Volkov's operation. Shipments intercepted. Warehouses burned. Associates disappeared. He didn't hide it from me, didn't shelter me from the reality of what protection meant in his world. I saw him return at dawn with blood on his knuckles, saw the cold calculation in his eyes when he received reports, understood with horrifying clarity that being under his protection made me a target, made me a weapon his enemies could use against him. "You can't send me away," I said when he suggested moving me to a safe house upstate. "If I leave, they'll know they can manipulate you through me. They'll keep trying." Something dark and possessive flashed across his face. "Then you stay closer. You don't leave this estate without me. You sleep in my wing, not the guest suite." He stepped into my space, his hand cupping my jaw. "You stay where I can see you, where I can protect you. Always." I found Cash in his private study 3 nights after the attack, standing by the window overlooking the city, a glass of whiskey forgotten in his hand. He looked almost vulnerable in the dim lamplight, his usually impeccable composure cracked just enough for me to glimpse the man beneath the ruthless exterior. When he heard me enter, he didn't turn around. "My father was a dock worker," he said quietly, his voice rougher than usual. "We lived in a tenement in Red Hook where the rats were bigger than my baby sister. I watched my mother work herself to death cleaning rich people's houses, watched her hands bleed from scrubbing their floors while they looked through her like she was invisible." He finally turned to face me, and something raw and honest flickered in his dark eyes. "You reminded me of her. That first day you arrived, so desperate, so determined to be invisible. But you weren't afraid of me, Odette. Not until I gave you reason to be." My breath caught in my chest. "I was always afraid of you," I admitted, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming at me to maintain distance. "Just not the way you think." I was afraid of this, of feeling something I had no right to feel. Of wanting someone so far above my station that even dreaming about it felt like a crime. "Above your station?" Something dangerous flashed across his face as he closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hand finding my waist and pulling me against him. "You think I'm above you? I'm a criminal, Odette. I've killed men with my bare hands. I've built an empire on violence and fear. You're the one who's too good for this world." "I don't care," I whispered, my hands finding his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath my palms. "I don't care about any of it. I just care about you." He made a sound low in his throat, part growl, part surrender, and then his mouth was on mine, kissing me with the same controlled intensity he brought to everything else. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head back as he deepened the kiss, claiming me with a possessiveness that should have terrified me but instead made me feel safe for the first time in my life. I kissed him back desperately, pouring 6 months of buried longing into the embrace, my fingers clutching his shirt like he was the only solid thing in a world spinning out of control. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead against mine. "There's no going back from this," he warned, his voice raw. "If you choose me, you choose all of it, the danger, the violence, this world. Say yes, Odette. Choose me." "Yes," I breathed against his lips, sealing my fate. "I choose you." The whispers started immediately. I was no longer just the maid who'd gotten lucky. I was Cash Valerius's weakness, a liability wrapped in expensive dresses he now insisted I wear. Antonio's expression remained carefully neutral, but I caught the disapproval in his eyes during meetings I now attended at Cash's side. The other underbosses watched me like vultures circling prey, calculating whether my presence made their boss vulnerable enough to challenge. "They think I make you weak," I told Cash one morning after a particularly tense strategy session where his lieutenant, Victor, had barely concealed his contempt. "Let them think what they want," Cash said, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hand tightened on his whiskey glass. He was caught between 2 impossible choices, protecting me and maintaining the fear that kept his empire intact. "Then teach me," I said suddenly, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. "Teach me to survive your world. I won't be the weakness they're waiting to exploit." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, then respect, then that dark possessiveness I'd come to crave. "You understand what you're asking? This isn't playing pretend, Odette. This is learning to be dangerous." I'm already dangerous, I replied, holding his gaze. I'm the thing you care about most. Teach me to be a weapon instead of a target. Over the following weeks, Cash transformed me. Antonio taught me to shoot, his instruction cold and methodical until I could hit center mass at 20 yards. Cash himself taught me about his business, the territory maps, the supply chains, which families could be trusted and which were always looking for an opening. He showed me how to read people, how to spot threats, how to smile while calculating exactly how to destroy someone if necessary. The test came during a meeting with the Calabrese family, old rivals negotiating a temporary truce. Their underboss, Leo, had been drinking too much, his eyes lingering on me with predatory interest. When Cash stepped out to take a call, Leo moved closer, his hand reaching for my thigh under the table. "Valerius's little pet," he murmured. "What do you think he'd pay to get you back in one piece?" I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled and pressed the knife I'd concealed in my dress against his inner thigh, exactly where Antonio had taught me, close to the femoral artery. "I think he'd burn your entire family to ash," I said softly, sweetly. "But he won't have to, because you're going to apologize and never look at me again. Aren't you, Leo?" His face went white. "I apologize." When Cash returned and saw Leo's expression, saw the knife I was calmly returning to its sheath, something fierce and proud blazed in his eyes. That night, he pulled me close and whispered, "You're not my weakness, Odette. You're my queen." The final threat came from within. Victor, Cash's ambitious lieutenant, had been gathering supporters for weeks, convinced that a boss distracted by love was a boss ready to fall. He made his move during a shipment negotiation at the docks, guns drawn, demanding Cash step aside and let real leadership take control. Cash's response was swift and absolute. Within 48 hours, Victor and his supporters were gone, not killed, but exiled with nothing, their accounts frozen, their reputations destroyed. "I don't need to prove my strength through violence anymore," Cash told me afterward, his hand gentle on my face. "I have something more valuable than fear. I have you." My mother's latest scan came back clear. The doctors called it remarkable, a complete response to treatment. My brother had been accepted to Columbia on a full scholarship, my sister thriving in a private school Cash had quietly arranged. They were safe, truly safe, in ways I'd never dreamed possible when I'd arrived at this estate with nothing but desperation and a battered suitcase. The household staff had changed their tune entirely. Mrs. Chen now sought my opinion on menus. The other maids curtsied when I passed, though I'd begged them to stop. Antonio had become something like a friend, his initial disapproval transforming into grudging respect after the Leo incident. "You're good for him," he told me last week. He was becoming a monster. You reminded him he's human. Tonight, I found myself back in the kitchen where everything had changed, the industrial kitchen with its stainless steel and marble, the pendant lights casting warm amber light over expensive appliances. But I wasn't pressing my face against the refrigerator, trying to muffle sobs. I was standing at the counter, wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my family's entire monthly rent used to be, comfortable and confident in this space that had once witnessed my breaking. Cash appeared in the doorway, still in his suit from today's meetings, and something softened in his severe features when he saw me. He crossed to where I stood, his hand finding mine and threading our fingers together with casual intimacy, his other arm wrapping around my waist as he pulled me back against his chest. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against my hair. I looked at our reflection in the dark window, no longer a poor maid and her terrifying employer, but partners standing equal, facing the glittering lights of New York together. The woman in the glass looked nothing like the broken girl who'd sobbed against cold steel. She looked strong, loved, worthy. "I'm thinking," I said softly, turning in his arms to meet his dark eyes, "that I finally understand I deserve this. Deserve you. Deserve to be happy." Cash's smile was rare and devastating. "You deserve everything, Odette. And I plan to spend the rest of my life proving it." He kissed me then, tender and possessive, and I kissed him back knowing I'd found something precious in this dangerous world, not just love, but my own worth. If Cash and Odette's journey from maid and boss to equal partners captured your heart, show some love with that like button and subscribe for more dark romance stories. I want to hear from you. Tell me what time it is where you're watching and what country you're calling home. Did their transformation move you? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share this with anyone who believes in powerful protector romances and finding your worth in unexpected places.